Hello, my name is Jubal, and I want to say that I graduated high school. You know, I know for some people it's a huge accomplishment, is a big deal in the family. You know, I temporarily agree on that because the getting a diploma is just whatever, you know. You know, because they always push that you need to get a high school diploma minimum before you could get a job. You know, those low tier jobs. And I'll say, to me, it's crazy because, you know, when I was at high school, I know people who've been working since age 16 or whatever, and I don't like the idea where you're still in high school, right? Still trying to figure out, you know, like I said, and then you're trying to get a job to, save money. And there's nothing wrong with it, but what I have a problem with is that the parents, some people have different environment, different situations and scenarios, but they do kick them out, because they saw they're making good cash, and they just throw them outside of their own house and say, figure out. And that became the basis idea, of the U.S. young adult population, because they always say, oh, you want independence. The parents say you want independence, and then go out and do something, since you're already 18, 19, 20, or whatever. You just go out. I don't care what you do, but I want you to get on your feet and keep going. And to me, it sounds like a wrong idea, because the kids, not only that the kids are getting exploited since 16, or even younger, because they're told they need to get a job, and then you kick them out because, there's some volunteer work or entry job that pays more than their parents' actual job, so you just kick them out. I never liked the idea of working at the age of 15, 16 years old, because what is happening is, by the time you turn 18, if you're going to college or not, the parents expects you to pay. I know I may sound entitled a little bit, but you can't do that to the kids. You can't, because some of them are close to retirement, or they're still young, like young parents and stuff. you want them to pay the full rent, and then that's why sometimes kids will rather go to the military, because so they don't have to pay the rent and escape from the family household. So it is what it is. I'm I'll say my real age. I'm 19 years old. Like I said, graduated high school already. I'm gonna try and go look for a job in this shitty job market that is happening, which I saw on news. I may sound like a pseudo person, but I was watching the news that these what's it called? These kids who are trying to find summer jobs, they're really can't find any because of the job market being terrible and the World Cup shit. I've been hearing about a lot of corruption in it. Even though I still watch it, probably that's my problem. That we watch the World Cup, even though there's a lot of bad shit happening outside the world or outside the area where I live. So I think that it's just that I wish they could stop pursuing that you need to get a job at age 16 and a driver's license. Get a driver's license because it fucks them over later. Like I said, for example, with driver's license, imagine you have a big group of friends, and the only person who has a car, or many of them have a car, they have a driver's license, but they can't afford to buy a car from a mom and pop dealership, and they see you're the only one who has a car, they might use it, and I have no problem with that, but the issue I'm having with having some of them just use you as an Uber to go to school, come back home, or to hang out, and then come back home. I know it may sound like a person who never had like a big group of friends, and yeah, I never did. What's it called? I only made 3 friends in my 19 years of living. 3 friends. 3 fucking friends, man. And you could say, oh, well, that's tough. That's really tough. Why you have 3 friends? Because, I'll say this, and I explained it before. I was sheltered. I was sheltered throughout most of my life. And, I grew up in the late 2000s, early 2010s. When the internet's still blowing up. I wanted those, like I said, I wanted to be those kids who had a bicycle and just ride to whatever street it may be, if you know what I mean. Like, I wanted to have that idea as a kid, that I just wanted. I had a bicycle, don't get me wrong. It was the size of a BMX bike. I was not trying to do tricks or anything, but it was what my parents could afford at the time. But I'll ask my parents, I want to go with these other guys. They're a little bit older than me. You could see in between the line is that why would a little kid go with these almost middle school kids, who are starting to figure their life shit. But to me, because our parents told us stories about how they're always all about all day outside in the 1990s, and sometimes those stories will make me jealous, even now, it still pisses me off, but I kind of understand, because they want to protect me from the other side of this dark, messed up world. I haven't experienced it. Probably it will hit me sooner or later than I thought it may be. But it's just pissed me off a little bit, I know it's not a big ass deal, but it just pissed me off a little bit that when your parents tell you how in the 90s they will always be all about, it gets you jealous because, well, like I said, my environment is different. I was sheltered, and I live in a middle class area, and there I see kids walk, all the time, like all the time, and it made no sense to me that they could do that, but we kids can't, who are growing up in middle to late 2000s, because they always tell us, if you want independence, you gotta do this and that. Well, building an expectation list inside of our brains to keep doing it, and while we can go outside, it just made no stupid sense, so that's why now. And also I was hearing about, like speaking about going outside and getting a driver's license shit. I was hearing that the new model cars, I think beginning end of this year or next year, they're gonna add a webcam inside the cars now, like built-in webcam, and they're adding a kill switch, and it's all electrified. Some of you heard it, some of you didn't, but basically if you do something terrible, which happens all the fucking time, or you messed up once, they'll turn off your car automatically, and it sounds very fucking familiar, if you guys caught up with the whole dystopian rabbit hole shit. that it basically means they're being surveillance to the fucking teeth, you know? And nobody likes that shit. Nobody likes it, you know? So I know there's some people who are barely getting a driver's license like me. I might be reconsidering that, hey, you know, it's not worth it, you know? It's not worth buying a car, you know? And I have a feeling they're gonna ban, like, classic car because, you know, they have no electricity. The only electricity they have is just the radio, and that's about it. But I have a feeling they're gonna start banning it slowly, which I think probably they started doing that. You know, I might just not know it. You know? So yeah. And also, another thing, I got some story from high school since I'm out. So there's one story I think I told before, but I'll re-explain it. Is that there was a stabbing incident in my high school, which I graduated almost, what has it been, 4 years ago now? Because, you know, these two kids were beefing on social media, and you know, it got so out of hand that the person waited outside. You know, what I heard from the news or from people around the school, you know, when we came back, that the person jumped over the fence and looked for the victim he was beefing with. He missed. He was about to stab the kid, or I could be misinterpreting the story, but I think I heard the attacker miss, and the kid defended, so picked up the knife and stabbed him. You know, when I heard that, I was like, damn, that's crazy. You know, because I was hearing that the high school I went to was all ghetto and shit, you know, but it turned out fine. You know, I never had any issues with anybody, but and there's another story where I think everybody you're most familiar with, but I was hearing the fucking girls or whatever were getting pregnant left and right, you know, in high school. I never understood that perception of getting pregnant in high school or having a relationship, you know, because, you know, having a relationship is very difficult to maintain while you or they are pursuing their goals in life, you know. But I will applause or give you flowers about people who manage to, like, able to balance their relationship and their aspirations / goals they want to do. To me, luckily I never had like relationships besides like friendship, but like actual relationships where I have a girlfriend, I never did, you know, until, you know, I was hearing, like I said, when I was hearing about these girls were getting pregnant, 2 years later I was hearing in the U.S. that the birth rates were declining. I was like, what the fuck? Why are they're declining? Makes no goddamn sense. And I was saying, oh, because of this and that. I'm like, oh, it makes sense. And it clicked, in my head. I know it sounds a little bit funny to me and not for everybody. But, I was thinking, damn, these girls were getting pregnant early because, either their home life sucks and they want to move out, or it's because they want to fill in the statistics, of having a baby while going to high school. And I'm no shame for it, If shit happens, But, remember, most of the parents won't like that. Because they don't like kids or teenagers getting pregnant early because of the aspirations they have, and they just waste it in the drain. And I kind of understand, when sometimes the reason some of them have kids early on is because of the situation they have at home. So that's the second story. The third story, I think it was from middle school. That, every middle schooler's brains and minds are very fucking different. I remember, I think it was in middle school, which is junior high, right? I remember it was during PE, right? During PE, I was like doing I was like doing some exercise and shit, from PE. We were doing like little sports and shit. And I remember we were all lining up, and then all of a sudden I heard a punch. I heard a punch. I was like, what the fuck? And then I was like, and I was like, what the fuck? And I turn around and I see this kid lay down, fucking knocked out, crying, like a bitch. Because I was in middle school, he was like always a fucking problem to everybody, and he got what he deserved. And his other friend, which I know, and I'll say his name, I don't like confrontations or anything, but if it comes to that, it comes to that. His name was Artun, and I remember he was crying like a bitch, like, oh my God, I hope you, this and that. Because, he supported his friend, while all that trials and tribulations shit was happening in front of his eyes. And to me, in that moment, it felt good, because, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't have the balls to do it, but it felt good until I found out he was going to the same high school that I was. I'm like, I didn't give a fuck, And I remember, I think that moment changed him because, he started being all friendly and shit, while his friend left in high school. Probably because when we got into high school, he left the high school where I was going to another one. Probably because out of embarrassment, And I'll say to our tune, that hey, I'll say that your friend got what you deserve, I could bring that shit up, because of the embarrassment, and you're a fucking problem in middle school. So I'll say that, and you can't do shit, even though we weren't allowed to record, but I was there in that moment to witness it, cartoon. So I don't give a fuck. And then there's another story I remember, and I always had this big ass beef with this another kid, which he's now mad, and I'm surprised this dude graduated with all the fuck ups he did. I know his family a little bit, and his name is Zeppelin. And I'll tell you, this kid named Zeppelin was always a fucking issue, This dude, since elementary school, would start fights or belittling people, all the fucking time, He would belittle people almost every single goddamn time. And so in high school, I get to see his true self, like, showing, which was I remember he would start fights and shit, and once I was walking up, going to do my thing during lunch period or nutrition, I remember he was talking about, oh, I'm gonna do this fight, I'm gonna join that fight or something like that. Like I said, I was misinterpreting shit on the shit, but he was a fucking problem until when I went to a ceremony and I saw him. I was like, what the fuck, and like, I was thinking, how the fuck did he graduate? And he was the definition of a bad kid, because I already know his situation that happened with his mom or dad, which I'll keep it to a side. But still, I was shocked, that he fucking what's it called? He fucking graduate, It's fucking mind blowing, I would imagine what he's gonna do in college, work/military. So, and I would say, this is Zeppelin, And I'm like, hey, I'm shocked that you graduated from high school, I'll tell him, I'm shocked that you graduated high school, bro. I'm shocked because you were doing all this fucked up shit under your dad, which I'm surprised probably consulted you or probably disciplined you or any shape or way or form, that, and you graduate, I know to you, getting a diploma is such a big deal, but I just think it's just an excuse to continue mess up your life, man. And I'll be more shocked if you turn your life around and be a better person than you were during your up and coming years. you know. So those are the two people that are a fucking problem in my life. And the funniest thing, I was bullied in elementary school because of that. Because, you know, I wouldn't say I was a victim, you know, but I definitely was, you know. So I'm just happy I graduated because, you know, I don't want to deal with anybody's shit and hear anything of that, you know. So I'm just happy and living. I'm gonna start my own shit and do what I want to do without getting into some legal or illegal troubles along my career and my journey. So yeah, and before I end this video, I want to do a side note / off topic, you know, about my journey of high school, which actually, you know, I'll continue right now, but or I'll continue next time. But you know, for off topic reasons, I started getting into fighting games actually. You know, for you guys who don't know, I'm a gamer. You know, which is not surprising. It's my hobby. You know, I what's it called? I play a lot of video games, and I try different types of games. But one of the games I never touched mostly is fighting games. You know, which because it takes time to like learn the mechanics of each game, how to use each character properly, choose the one that you like the most, and that's about it, you know. So I'm starting to learn how to play fighting games, and also I'm the type of nerd to like, well, you know, because I don't know why, but I had this like mind, like, what happens if you play all fighting games for like 30 days straight? So, you know, I was researching and I find out that it improves like your reaction time or something like that. You know, I was like, oh shoot, all right, that's sweet. You know, that's sweet. I'll try to do that. You know, so I started playing fighting games because, you know, I want to improve myself and also not to be the person who doesn't try all games. You know, we'll just stick to one genre. But yeah, and so this wraps up for the video. So, and just to tell you what happened during those 4 months. So my name is Jubal, and see ya.